Welcome to Coach's Corner, everyone. I'm your host, Coach Tripp. Local sports report Thursday night. Kind of a different segment. Special guest, a good friend of mine. And Coach Bradley Boes over there drinking a cold beer. Are we sponsored by Miller Lite yet?
We need to be.
We need to be. That's right. Former referee in college hoops player. Brad, thanks for being on the show, man. We're going to have a blast.
Coach. It's been a while.
It has been a while. Yeah, you're right. Shoot, have you even been on the podcast or just the radio show?
I think in the beginning when you first started, I was on for a little bit.
All right, folks, we're going to tackle a couple subjects today. Number one is the referee, the environment and the situation that we find now high school referees and probably college and pro referees, not so much, but we'll talk all about referees, why we're losing referees, why we can't find referees, what the influence from coaches and players and fans, especially parents as well. We'll talk all about that. That's coming up in the first half. Second half, we're going to tackle the book by Phil Savage, 4th and Goal Every Day, about Saban and the process. We're going to talk all about that in the second part. Bradley, did you finish the book?
Yes, sir. What a good book. And then I read the program, which is kind of is conjunction with Phil Savage's book. It's a different kind of book, but it does talk about the recruiting process, how we hired coaches, but it also talked about Bear Bryant as well, and their similarities, how they coached, and how they recruited, and who they hung out with.
Who the coaches hung out with and learned from, you mean?
So Bear Bryant is really unique. He was not scared to hang out with other great coaches.
Right.
And the guy that was at USC and the guy that was at Texas, I forget, the guy at USC that won all those
Daryl Royal and Emery Bullard, who started the Wishbone.
He would hang out with them and they would talk ideas. And he just felt like if you're around smarter people, the better you're going to be.
Yeah.
Don't be intimidated by greatness.
He wanted to hire smarter people than him.
Yeah.
Not yes men.
So Saban, believe it or not, as much of a control freak as he was, he decided to go that route too. You know how hard it was probably for him to hire Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian and those people. He knew how intelligent they were. And he wanted to be around these smart, young people that had great ideas. Stuff right. That he was a great defensive guy, but he was not a great offensive guy. So he knew he needed to be around the smartest offensive guys in the world.
So that's what the book talks about, how both of them learned from other coaches. How about
recruiting? It really talks about recruiting with Nick Saban, yeah.
Recruiting? Okay. It goes into more than recruiting than 4th and Goal does. For 4th and Goal, we're going to give some good details on it. Matter of fact, let's start out talking about that, and then we'll finish with the referee talk.
Okay, go ahead.
So, did it talk any about adaptability? Because when I had Coach Mel Moore on my show before, God rest his soul, before he passed away.
What a good man he was, wasn't he?
Yeah. Oh, man, what a guy. 10 national championships, covered every finger on his hands. Oh, my gosh. So he was talking about how they didn't look alike, talk alike, walk alike, and their personality wasn't a lot alike.
But they were a lot alike.
But there were a lot alike in between.
They were a lot alike.
Yeah, the 6 inches in between here, they were a lot alike. All right, so this was an interesting book because it breaks down the process. What everybody knows is Saban. It says, if you execute what's important at the moment to the best of your ability without undue regard for the outcome, your chances of ultimately getting the result you want increases exponentially. Okay. Now, Saban calls it to find joy and fulfillment in the hardest moments. Okay. And those training sessions are the hardest practices. Saban calls it thrive on the hard. Okay. I call it enjoying the grind. But whatever you want to call it, it's got to be a part of your vernacular if you're a coach. Okay, you got to go hard. And we're going to talk a little bit in here later about how hard practices are at Alabama compared to all the other colleges across the country. Now, let's go back to the original. Let's give people a little history lesson here, Brad. they go back. Savage actually attributes the Bama system to its roots from the 1960s Dallas Cowboys, with famous Cowboy player personnel director Gil Brandt and, of course, head coach Tom Landry. And they first used the computer analytics to evaluate college players. And so Saban breaks down this into, number one, analytics, this book, and recruiting, development of players, and practice. So we're going to look at those three aspects, okay? Now, recruiting. This formula, of course, Tom Landry called it the book, okay? But it was really a computer program to predict future success in the NFL. For example, in 1977, the Dallas Cowboys were deciding between Ricky Bell and Tony Dorsett. And the computer printout, they're going back and forth. And finally, Coach Landry looks at the player personnel guys and say, what does the book say? And he gave Ricky a 5% chance to be all pro and Tony a 90% chance.
That's a great story, by the way. That's the most wonderful part of the book, because I think the other guy was out of the NFL within 2 or 3, 4 years. Like, I don't even think he did anything.
Right. That's that. And then they go on, and the Cowboys, which Saban uses a version of course, they use 5 characteristics to determine if they were going to be a good player. The measurables: height, weight, speed, agility, all that. And then number 2 is the background on their ability to coach. Are they coachable?
Yeah.
Number 3, the specifics of a certain position. Can he backpedal? Can he turn? Overall athletic ability was a whole separate category, which I thought was interesting. And competitiveness is a whole separate category, which is critical for the linebacker position. But they put all this together, and it actually just came to 20 consecutive winning seasons for America's team. So the connection comes in 1992, okay, when Brandt and them flew to Cleveland, where Bill Belichick and defensive coordinator Nick Saban stood. And they shared their computer draftings, and they, mixed, a little bit here and there. And then, they suggested also using this numeric grades, Brad. They were physical, mental, intangibles. For instance, injuries, character flaws, stuff like that were marked as well.
Yeah.
They go into detail. In other words, they couldn't have outliers. I don't think I would have ever been able to play at Alabama because I might not even made the preferred walk-on list.
In the book, The Program, it talks about that too.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, it goes into that.
So, they take no chances on kids. Also, Saban looks at the kid's bubble.
Yeah.
You know what his bubble is?
What's
that?
That?
Bubble butt, looking for that gluteus maximus.
The strength, the lower strength.
That's where Hobbs, come on in, Hobbs. We just started,
Coach.
brother. So, that kind of stuff, Saban also has got to see the recruit in person. They all measure their arms and their hands, and they also do a psychological evaluation on all the recruits as well. But, it comes to Alabama coaches do not look at highlight tapes. They're too misleading. They want to see profile tape. Hobbs, thanks for coming in, buddy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Most college coaches now.
All right. How are you guys doing?
Awesome.
Hey, Coach, how are you?
I'm fine, sir.
Yes, I drove by PSC today. They were up 7-1, I think, or 8-1.
Good. I just rode by there. Everybody was gone. Thank you for that update there.
They were winning pretty big.
I went to the game, 9-1.
They're really good.
Josiah Glotfelter pitched no hit, no run ball through 7 innings, 7 2/3 innings, I should say. And then
really
gave up a few runs, 1 run and a couple hits.
From Tate High, right?
Yep, from Tate High School.
Local boy.
They're 21-2. That was their opening Panhandle Conference game today. So
think about it in baseball in this area. If you just can get all the local talent, that's not a bad deal in baseball. Like, there's a lot of local talent here.
Let's hand it to Coach Llewellyn. Brian Llewellyn, his dad's former major leaguer and is right there with him. Man, he just retired from coaching 30 years in the pros. So I saw Dennis Llewellyn today. He's got great mentors. He's got a great ball club, a lot of sophomores. I think this is their year.
Yeah.
I think they're ranked number 6 in the country.
They're really good.
Is it Northwest Florida or Gulf Coast is 1?
Gulf Coast.
Gulf Coast
Gulf
is
Coast.
number one.
In I think Eastern Florida State is undefeated on the other part of the state. They're really good.
All right. So one of my favorite quotes from Saban, Brad, is do you want the pain of discipline or the pain of disappointment? I love this quote. I remember, thank God, when I was at Alabama, I took the pain of discipline because I didn't want to go back to New York and be a failure. But, man, it was brutal. Man, I think about walk-ons, Baker Mayfield, maybe the greatest walk-on I've ever seen, J.J. Watt, I think was a walk-on.
J.J. Watt.
Well, in basketball, my greatest walk-on story is Jeff Hornacek for the Utah Jazz at Iowa State.
Where did he walk on at?
Iowa State.
Iowa State? Man.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about player development, okay, in the book, Fourth and Goal. Folks, we're talking about Phil Savage's book, the former director of the Senior Bowl. He wrote a book on Coach Saban because he was there, and he traveled all over the country and saw every single college workout, every single college practice. And Savage says, quote, recruiting is significant, but what Bama does with player development is the best part. Talk to any NFL scout and they'll tell you Alabama practice field resembles a pro camp more than any other program in the country.
So can I ask you a question with that? Is it
Okay.
because of the depth they have that they can have those great practices?
No, it's just the it's the intensity, it's the standard. It was there when I was there because I got there after back-to-back national titles, but you know, it's slipped. We've slipped. Everybody slips.
It's what's expected. It's what's expected every single day.
Yes, it's what's expected of every coach, and then we'll get into it. We'll give it some more reasons on why they're different than everybody else. Okay, we'll get into it. They take the player development, which is Savage says is the best in the country, and I agree. It's from the neck up and the neck down.
Yeah.
Okay. So in other words, you got mental development and physical development. Now everybody's doing the physical development. I think the mental development is the most important part. Okay. It's not easy. Phil says it's not easy. It's not easy to play DB at Alabama, of course, because Coach Saban is a DB coach. Yeah. They use a sophisticated system for pass defense. You cannot be below average in intelligence. Okay, so that's one thing. All right, they don't take dummies.
Yes,
they just don't. In the NFL's the same way. Everybody thinks a bunch of dumb jocks running around. No, it's not. No, those guys in the NFL.
No, that thing is hard, and
everything's hard.
It's not about skill level. It's about mental development and knowing where to be at the right time.
Okay, so. Yeah, that reminds me. I was talking with Dennis Llewellyn today, and he was talking to college kids, right? Pensacola State college kids. And he asked them, what's the most important thing, physical development or mental development? You know what all of them said in college? Now,
physical.
All of them said physical. Now, on this show for the past 12 years, I'm doing the show 13 years, and I've interviewed a lot of guys, a lot of ex-NFL players, NBA players, Major League ball players, all of them. And I ask them that question, and almost every single one to the T says mental development.
Yeah.
More important. So the kids still aren't getting the message out there.
Well, they don't know because in high school, there's so much probably physically more, more physically gifted than most people. So they don't know. And then when they get to college or the pros,
right,
there's a tier there.
Is like this.
Yes.
And the tier probably is, in NFL and in NBA and baseball, you have 10%. It doesn't matter. They're just going to be better than everybody else. And then you have that 5% that's better than everybody else. That's just mentally different than everybody else. Like Michael Jordan. He was just mentally stronger.
Elite.
Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, even Kobe Bryant. I mean, they're just so much. It's just so much different. Jerry Rice, Tom Brady.
You're right. All right, let's take two more points why Alabama wins and other teams don't follow suit. Communication is a vital thing on the football field. Especially in big-time college football and pros. Not so much in high school, but it does get loud in some high school stadiums. So you have to learn to communicate with your teammates. So there's hand signals, the crowd noise in the big stadiums. they were just a wash. I couldn't hear. It was like a big hum to me. Okay, it was so loud you couldn't hear. So you had to communicate, and that's one thing. They have great communication and they work on it. Fundamentals is another thing that Alabama does that I think is critical. As a DB coach, I'm not nearly as smart as Saban, but we're both DB coaches, and I did fundamentals and I will at PHS every single day for a long time. Every time at Tate, we backpedal. Phil Savage says in the book that Bama is one of the few places that teach backpedaling. What?
So if you don't teach, pardon my ignorance, if you don't teach backpedaling, what do you teach?
I have no idea if they don't teach backpedaling, but Phil's been to every college practice in America.
Do you teach just grabbing then?
It's small details. They teach backpedal, but they don't teach to actually get in your correct stance with your back straight. I mean, little details. Your first step out of your backpedal. Where are your eyes? Where's your hands? Your arms? Everything. Your head. You got to go over all that stuff with them and then repeat it. Okay, so. The other thing is, like you said, small details are taught 101 from the very beginning. Now, this is college football, and they're starting from 101. I was thinking about PHS's 101, but I don't think there's a 01. So we're going to have to start from the very beginning. But I think
y'all figured out though.
All right, listen to this. This really shook me to the core, and I couldn't understand this at all. Savage recalls going to 25 different FBS level schools in 2015 to recruit players for the Senior Bowl. He said he only saw 2 where every player took on a defensive blocker, separated from that blocker, and then went and made an open field tackle. Only 2. They were Michigan State and Alabama. Now, I've done that drill every day, every year I coach, and I'm going to do it again. And I don't understand. It's a defensive back specific drill. I can't imagine any team not doing it. And I
would bet D'Antoni was at Michigan State.
Yes,
and
guess
who D'Antoni was with? Belichick and Saban.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
So that kind of makes more like part of that tree.
Is contact so limited they don't have time to do that?
I don't know. It's weird.
They probably do limit.
They do limit college,
but I think that leads to more injuries too. The less contact you have.
Okay, let me give you contact. Let me give you an example why you're so right. You can archive my show, Coach's Corner, and go back and see some of the Liverpool high school.
We talk about this. Coach, we have talked about this with George O'Leary.
We talk about banging. Let me tell you, I coached here for 20 years, and I never seen banging like we did at high school with George O'Leary. Guess what? I don't ever remember anybody getting hurt. All right? Now, I love Coach Greg Seibert to death because he gave me my chance in coaching. But we didn't bang a whole lot at Catholic. And, one year we had 12 shoulder surgeries, and I couldn't understand it, or injuries.
Well, I think if you bang more, your body's going to get used to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
It's going to adjust. It's, it's kind of like pitching a baseball. I don't know. Hobbs, tell me, probably the less you do and then you try to do more at the end, you're probably going to get hurt. And I don't know.
Well, in baseball, you got guys that play other positions other than pitching. So they get their pitching in, and then they might go to shortstop or second base and get some more. And that helps build up your tolerance or your endurance there. Same way that you guys are talking about football here. I don't like the way they do the preseason classic. You don't take the quarterback down to the ground, and then the guy gets hurt the first week because the guy hadn't been hit since the last game of the year last year.
Right.
That's the only time he's been touched.
Right.
Okay, he's not touched during the summer, not touched during preseason, not even the preseason classic. He's not even touched. So I
agree. Yeah. You got to do the physical work, otherwise you're
hit, man. I think football is a hitting sport, and the more you hit, the better off you're going to be in the long run.
All right. So at Alabama, to conclude with fundamentals, simply put by Savage, you either devote yourself to the rigors of fundamentals or you get passed on the depth chart. And let me tell you a funny story. I was reading a book about Bill Walsh years ago, and I played with Jerry Rice in an all-star game. So I had a teammate play with them in the 49ers. So I love the 49ers. I love Bill Walsh. I read his book, And he drove by this high school stadium one off season after Jerry Rice and Joe Montana have been to multiple Pro Bowls. And he goes by this high school stadium and he goes, what the hell? That looks like Jerry and Joe. And he goes over there and they were practicing fundamentals. He said, quote, that would bore a high school kid to death. That's what it takes.
Did you ever hear Jerry Rice's story about the hill?
The hill?
Yeah, running that hill.
Yep.
He ran up the hill.
Yep. He talks about
every day. He ran a mile up the hill. And I don't remember who they were talking about. Went with him one time, and he didn't think it was going to be a big deal. And halfway through, Jerry just took off, and he was like, "What's he doing?" I think it was Terrell Owens. He's like, he couldn't understand how hard this. He said, "This guy works so hard. Like it's amazing how hard he worked. What great shape he was in."
Oh yeah.
The great ones just torture themselves, man.
And that's the top 5% we're talking about.
Yeah, that's the top 5%. Let's not talk about the top 5% because, God, Eddie Payton talks about his brother Walter doing the same thing, running that hill. So
it's
if you
amazing.
want to watch,
they just have a mental gift.
If you want to watch that story, just archive back to the Eddie Payton interview. All right, so practice of Bama. As the Alabama player quote says, our practices can be tougher than the games. And I preached that on this show for years, right? Coach Bryant was a believer in it. Jojo O'Leary was a believer in it. Let's see. So it's so hard that I remember when I left Alabama and went to Cleveland, which Marty Schottenheimer was not, one of these little sissy quarterbacks, but the practices were a lot easier in the NFL than they were at Alabama. In Coker,
probably high school too. You played for George O'Leary, coach. Yeah, that's probably the hardest.
I know, but Jacob Coker transferred from FSU to Alabama, and he says he found out the intensity at practices at Alabama were so much different than FSU. He marveled at the obedience to practice hard. Taking smack and having fun. You got to have fun with the kids, man. That's a priority with me, okay, too. You got to have fun with them. And if you don't join in, it's hard to survive. Your attitude must be a part of the ride. Have fun or else you're gone. You must be ultra competitive at Alabama, and that's a fact that not everybody's ultra competitive in every drill. So you got to make practices competitive. Let me ask you a question, Brad. When I was DB and I'm going to do it this year at PHS, one-on-one drills I made competitive by keeping a score. All right, I don't want to go into detail, but we kept score a certain way. What do you do in basketball to keep score, to keep the intensity high?
Playing time,
do you like
playing time? Like you just knew, there wasn't a score like you. So Coach Fryman had this drill we did, and it was one-on-one full court, and you were guarding your man full court, and you were trying to turn him as much as you could. So you make him go left, you make him go right. And then when you got to half court, it was game on. Like the offensive player could do whatever he wanted. And if they scored, you did it again. And you did it again. And you did it again. And that's a little humiliating when you're a freshman and you're going against a senior and he's just scoring on you. And you're kind of you're not getting it's you're really on the freshman team, but you're practicing on the varsity because they don't have enough players that day. And he's dog cussing you like you're one of them. And so that's the competitive nature.
Yeah.
But mentally you have a scorecard. You're like, okay, I've got to do something here. Like I've got to pull shorts. I've got to hand check him a little bit, push him a little bit, do something where he doesn't score.
Yeah.
And that's the scorecard.
Well, Coach, I know Steve Williams had a drill at Washington High School. They just recently honored him.
Yeah, right. What a great man he was.
Yeah,
he is. I mean, he's still a great man.
He put 8 minutes on the clock, and have ones against the twos. If the ones didn't score 30, they had to run. And if the twos let them score 30 in 8 minutes, they had to run.
Oh, wow.
And they started it off with that right there.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
That's good stuff right there.
That's how you make practice competitive.
And as we could see the other night, we had a team that scored 8 points in a half. You know, one of our better basketball teams scored 2 in the first, 8 in the half. Like you guys are saying, you got to compete at practice. You really got to compete.
Practice is where, like, if you read Bobby Knight's book, Season on the Brink, it's probably not a book that most people, younger people in this generation, if they read, as they would say, they would cringe. But his mentality was, I am going to make practice so hard that when we go to Madison, Wisconsin, and there's 20,000 people in the stands, that's not going to bother them. That's not going to bother them all. We're going to go to Northwestern. You know, they're not very good, but they're going to play us really well there. We're going to go to Michigan. And that was his mentality. If I can make it so hard and so competitive, and there was days he had the red team and he had the white team. And he'd have 4 starters on the red team to prove a point. Like, you're not playing well. So you're going to practice on the red team and not on the white team. And Steve Alford was probably, you know, he was the brunt of most of it. But he wanted to make practice competitive so the games are a little bit easier. And if you watch Knight, he doesn't get up and scream and holler and yell at his kids during the game. He just kind of sits there and coaches his team because he's done most of his coaching at practice.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so let's talk about some other subjects. Coaches have to love the practice. I'm a firm believer in that. I've seen coaches, you know, complain before they go out to practice. Here we go again, or you know, drag assing around. Coach Bryant used to call it drag assing around. Saban loves the practice and keeps it upbeat. As a coach myself, I'm a firm believer in that attitude. Every day I come on the field, it's a beautiful day for football, I would scream. So everybody knows. The enthusiasm for a coach has to be high because it's contagious. And if you can't expect enthusiasm from you, how can you expect it from your players?
You know, that's funny because my dad tells me the only thing he misses about coaching is practice. He loves practice.
Oh, wow. Really? Oh, does he really?
He doesn't really miss the games. He doesn't miss recruiting, but he loved the preparation of practice.
Wow.
And he's telling me that, hey, Brad, I don't think I miss his practice. I loved
the great Chip Boes is, of course, Bradley Boes' dad.
Yes, sir.
44 or 5 years in the great Chip Boes basketball camp.
The man loved to practice. He just loved practice.
Man, he loves to practice. You could tell in his basketball camp. All right, so, you know, then you have to go through when you teach a skill. I don't care if you're a teacher or coach. You have to follow these when you're teaching a drill, you're teaching a play, whatever subject or that you want to get across to your players. You have to explain it in this manner. You have to take this protocol. Explanation. You have to explain everything in a clear manner because communication, as we talked about earlier, is imperative. How you communicate, right?
I think that's the most important thing you can do in life is communication.
Okay, so it's part of the explanation. Okay, so that's number 1, and that's why it's probably number 1. But number 2, demonstration. Physically show them the drill or technique. If the math teacher doesn't put a math problem up on the board, give you an example, how do you know how to do it? So you got to show them. Okay, a lot of coaches, they get out of shape or they don't want to show them or something. You have to physically show them. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's why I got some work to do before spring training.
You're looking good, Coach.
Yeah.
We're up the house. Them guns are looking good, man.
He is.
I'm working in my cleats right now, man. I got to have cleats on because I got to show them.
You ought to see the guy out in the front yard backpedaling.
Yeah,
I got to see that.
I got to show them how to plant their foot. That's how detailed it has to be. You got a T-plant. All right.
Well, they've probably never been taught that. So that's good, Coach, that you're going to get there and teach, man.
No bad habits. Yeah. All right, I'll take it.
Yeah. They probably got bad habits, and you're going to teach them the good habits.
All right, demonstration and then participation. Of course, let them attempt the exercise. Number 4, correction. Tell them the good part first, and then correct them on the bad part. And then, of course, after that, They just have to repeat it over and over. And you don't repeat something until you get it right and then stop. You have to repeat something until you can't get it wrong. There's a big difference between doing it right and doing it till you can't get it wrong. It's called muscle memory.
Yeah.
You learn that in kinesiology and all that.
Kinesiology, yes.
Kinesiology, yeah.
Muscle memory, exactly.
I got my certification. I thought I would never pass that test. All right. So if you leave that out, okay. So and then they have a production. You know what's interesting to me? They have and you talked about it earlier. They have the personnel to do stuff like this. If I had 3 assistants, I would be doing it too. In practices, the coaches do a production sheet for every practice. So of course, we were always filmed on practice, and coaches would be watching, film a practice of you every day. So, but they have production sheet, and they, list the big things like stripping ball, causing turnovers, fumbles, who loafs and who doesn't. I love that part because you'll see on film if a play goes the other way, and the backside corner starts jogging or walking, I get livid.
Or takes an incorrect angle.
Yeah, it takes a too bad, right. It takes incorrect angle, too sharp or too right. So that's why you do pursuit drill. You got to do pursuit drill.
And you know what? Taking the incorrect angle, that happens quite a bit in football. Like if you watch film, it happens more than you think it would happen.
Oh, you could be off by 3 degrees, and
exactly.
By the time you get to the receiver, it's 8 degrees, and that's enough separation. Yeah, the angles are critical. All right, so you just have to, that was competitive practices. There was not like anything. Greg McElroy said tough coaching in practice is one of the reasons his teams responded well in championship settings, in big games. They seldom wilt at the moment, said McElroy. And Alabama from 2008 on won 9 championships in a row. I didn't say SEC. I didn't say national. I just say they won 9 championships in a row. So it was one or the other. But they also say Bama isn't for everyone. You compete or you go home. And that's the way it was when I was there. And like the standard we talked about to start this conversation. Finally, and this is how they end the book. This was freaking fascinating. The ending was the most fascinating part of the book, okay? Finally, Phil Savage saw Nick Saban in his office after a long, hot practice. He said, Coach, quote, one of the reasons you always win here is that your practices are tougher and more comprehensive than any other program, college or pro, unquote. Wow. Coach Saban just shrugged his shoulders and asked, so why aren't other teams doing this? And that's how the book ends. And that's my question. All right. These coaches that, they think they're so good and they know everything, but you can always learn from, like for instance, I had Coach Gene Stallings on my show, and he said he wrote 95% of that book, How to Build a Championship Team, that Coach Brian gets credit for, in 1961. Okay, so the secret, if there is a secret, the secret's been there for how many years? 60 years. And, and now this book has been out for so long, yet we still get no fundamentals. Practices aren't competitive. It's not you compete or you go home. It's not that if you're not smart enough, you got to sit down no matter how high you can jump or how far you can go. It's right there. The secret's right there on how to be a good coach, but I don't understand why some of them don't take advantage of it. That's my. I
don't know the coach. The irony of this is there's just certain people that are born to be leaders in this world, and they just demand a little more out of their people. Everybody, and that's just the reality. That's not everybody can do that, And Saban was so. There's a story of Zach Smith. He's assistant coach at Ohio State. He's going to take a job at Alabama. It's Sunday at 8:00 at night. He flies in. He goes to the Alabama office, and there's coaches there watching film, Monday's a recruiting day. Tuesday's a recruiting day. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's 14 days of recruiting. He said Urban Meyer, when he was at Florida, worked as hard as anybody you could possibly work for. When he was at Ohio State, he worked really, really hard, but he kind of, his health, he kind of took a little turn back a little bit. He didn't work quite but he said, holy cow. He goes, there's no way in hell I'm taking a job here. It's Sunday at 8 o'clock and we're about to go recruit. And these coaches are watching film and they're breaking down film. And he said, and it's not like he's not there. He's there. He's there breaking down the films. He's there with him. He's there talking to him. And there's just not many people
that
like
have
that.
No, there's not. There really isn't. There's
and that's why he got out of it. He could have continued to keep going for 2 or 3 more years, 4 more years, win 10, 11 games. But he wanted to do it the way he could do it, and he wanted to go all out. And that's his mentality. I mean, it killed Bear Bryant, literally. Like, I know drinking, smoking probably helped, but but he worked so hard. He grinded every single day.
Grinded every day. Yeah, we'll talk. Maybe we'll pick that subject up and talk a little bit more about that. But yeah, Coach Bryant was a relentless worker. I'll give you a quick example, and then we got to cut it off. But he was like you were saying earlier. He learned from Darrell Royal, the wishbone, because they had close to a losing season for a couple of years there in the 70s. So he wanted to switch over. And he adapted. He was willing to change. That's a whole nother subject we can talk about.
I mean, think about when Nick Saban gets beat by Hugh Freeze for the second time in a row. And he's like, okay, if this is where we're going with offense and the NCAA is good with this is the way we're going to go. Here comes Lane Kiffin. Here comes Steve Sarkisian. Here comes Brian Daboll. Here comes Steve Sarkisian back. That's it. That's what he did. And
willing to change for the better. Well. Yeah, right. Don't be stuck in your own ways. Don't have such an ego.
I know this. I can recruit better than you, and I'm going to have better players, and my practices are going to be better. And if this is the way we're going to play, I'm going to beat you.
Well, he gets hustlers like I was finishing that story about Coach Bryant when he went to Texas, learning the wishbone from the great Emory Ballard and Darrell Royal down there. Yeah. He got to the facility at 6:30 in the morning, and nobody was there. Right? He was
ready.
Wishbone from those guys. They come in around 6:45, 7 o'clock. Coach Bryant, first thing he says, "Don't you take your football seriously around here in Texas?"
That's great.
Coach Bryant can say something like that, right? I don't know. He didn't care. Coach Bryant would treat the janitor better than he would the president of the United States.
He probably made coffee for him every morning. He probably left the coffee pot open for him.
When he met Lyndon B. Johnson, Lyndon B. Johnson's 6'4", 6'5", and Coach Bryant was 6'4", is a big guy, right? Yeah. So Lyndon B. Johnson says, boy, they first when they're walking towards the president says to him, boy, you're a big one. And Coach Bryant says, well, you're a big son of a bitch yourself. Who would say that? Who would say that to the president?
Hey, I got one story, and then we'll move. I know you want to move on.
Okay.
Speaking of the janitor, Coach Fryman had this coffee pot in his office. And those people that know Coach Bill Fryman, his son played Major League Baseball, Travis Fryman. Mm-hmm. And every day after practice, it would be 7 o'clock at night. He's pouring out the coffee pot, and he's putting coffee grinds in there, and he's putting water in there. But he doesn't turn it on. I'm like, Coach, what do you do? Like, what is that about? He goes, the maintenance man. He comes in around 10 every night. I want to make sure he has coffee. And I said, really? He goes, have you ever seen my office dirty? No. And he would leave him. The coffee was, all the guy do is turn the coffee on. And his wife made him muffins too. And he would always leave a couple muffins for the maintenance guy too.
Oh man, that's what
it was. One of the most amazing
story. Yeah, those people.
He told me, you want to treat people how you want to be treated, but nobody wants to clean this building at midnight. Nobody wants to be here at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Let's give a hand.
But he said this man
that's what Coach Bryant was, man. He would treat the the cafeteria worker as well as anybody else and be so kind to him, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's a
that's what
special person. And then to be as tough as nails on the other side, in between the lines, that takes a big person. It takes courage.
Yeah,
awesome.
I was like, what did you do? And then as I got older, he told me more stories as I graduated. He would leave him his favorite bottle of scotch every once in a while, or 12-pack of beer, or just whatever the guy liked.
Yeah.
You know, the good old days.
Yeah, I know. All right, Hobbs, thanks for coming over.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. Have you on. Hey, let's not wait so long next time.
And thanks for having me, Coach. I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Mr. Hobbs, good seeing you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I walked by Badlands today. I was downtown doing something, and I thought about both of you fools. I said, Hobbs is the mascot to this place.
Hey, it was there this morning, I would say.
I think I woke him up.
I mean, I was there at 11. You weren't there. I don't think it was open yet, but you must have closed the place down.
Yes, that's what I meant.
I woke him up at lunchtime. I was eating. All right, bud. See you, bud. Peace.
Hey, enjoy March Madness.
Let's get together this weekend, okay?
Let's do that.
Sounds good. Talk to y'all later.
See you. So long. All right, that's awesome. Thanks for watching, everybody. That was an interesting conversation about Phil Savage's book, 4th and Goal Every Day, about the Saban process and how they win, why they win, what they do different, and how they do it different. So I hope you got something out of it. Hope all you coaches got a little bit better. Just get 1% better every day. Talk to you later, everybody. Stay tuned for these important messages. Without these great sponsors, this just wouldn't be possible.
Arbitrium Consulting for all your fencing, landscaping, pressure washing, tree trimming needs. Call 850-483-0350 for your free estimates. Serving Pensacola, Gulf Breeze, Navarre, Fort Walton, Destin, Perdido, Gulf Shores, Foley, and the entire Gulf Coast. Arbitrium Consulting is owner-operated, fully licensed and insured. Call today, 850-483-0350, the official landscaper of Coach's Corner.
Barnes Heating and Air is a proud sponsor of Alabama football, serving the entire Pensacola community for over 50 years. Barnes Heating and Air is passionate about providing customers with world-class air conditioning and heating repairs, sales, and installation. Barnes Heating and Air is family-owned, insured, and committed to quality. For a free estimate, call 478-0141. Barnes Heating and Air is #1 in customer service with service calls 7 days a week. Call Barnes Heating and Air, 478-0141, and roll Tide.
75 years of service and high tech today. It's Pensacola Glass Company at 433-8348. High tech is a term often applied to advanced services and products in today's marketplace. And today, glass is much more than the simple painted brittle, see-through stuff we hit baseballs through when we were kids. Glass is now a product with unique flexibility in both performance and application. And Pensacola Glass Company is growing right along. That's Pensacola Glass Company at 433-8348.
Barnes Heating and Air is a proud sponsor of Alabama football, serving the entire Pensacola community for over 50 years. Barnes Heating and Air is passionate about providing customers with world-class air conditioning and heating repairs, sales, and installation. Barnes Heating and Air is family-owned, insured, and committed to quality. For a free estimate, call 478-0141. Barnes Heating and Air is #1 in customer service with service calls 7 days a week. Call Barnes Heating and Air, 478-0141, and roll Tide.
For over 30 years, you have seen the orange Beck signs all over the Gulf Coast listing a property for sale or lease. Beck Partners is your trusted advisor in commercial real estate, property management, commercial and personal insurance. Senior Vice President David Valletto has been with Beck Partners since 1989. Take advantage of his wealth of knowledge by calling him today at 982-7352, 982-7352. Extensive experience in all aspects of leasing, sales, management, and site selection will make sure your expectations are